Hi, and welcome to my channel, Laura's Library Card. So today is time for another recent reads video. I'm going to be discussing the most recent 5 books that I read this year, and that is books 6 through 10. I have actually not put out my video at the time that I'm recording this of the first 5 books just because I'm lazy and still am editing. But let's just dive right in to the most recent reads. I listened to the audiobook of Soulmate Equation. This is by author duo Christina Lauren. And in this book, the premise is that the main character, Jess, is a single mom and a statistician. She's kind of tired of being alone. She wants a partner. And so she kind of decides on a whim to participate in this new dating service that is up and coming that matches people based on their DNA and sort of helps predict how compatible they might be. She is surprised to find out that she is an extremely highest ever match with one of the founders, who is this gruff but hot scientist that she's already kind of had a couple run-ins with. But love is a little bit more complicated than just what these numbers predict, right? So I did really enjoy the premise of this and the STEM elements and the math elements that was speaking to the nerd in me. Plus there was an element of a fake dating trope, which was fun. Also, it did feel a little bit like a sort of slow burn just because it was a lot of buildup, but somehow I did feel like both the emotional development was there, but also it like went too fast. Like I felt like they were layering in good foundation, but came too quickly to the I love you moments. I also personally didn't feel that the third act drama was very impactful for me. I kind of had predicted generally what it was going to be or something very similar to what it was. And so I just didn't feel like they had enough conflict between them that then needed resolved. But overall, I did like this book. And I felt like it wasn't like super amazing, best ever, but it was a good Christina Lauren, and I liked the hero, and I believed their romance overall. The second book that I'm going to be talking about is Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. I read this as a ebook, and the premise for this one is that Jordan is our main female character, and she and her boyfriend Cole move into Cole's dad's house. Cole's dad's name is Pike, and there is a lot of connection and sort of tension, sexual tension, that is brewing between Jordan and Pike, but they are trying to suppress this. And then it's not really that much of a spoiler to say that Cole and Jordan eventually break up, and then Jordan and Pike, Cole's dad, just cannot resist their feelings for each other despite the age gap between them and the sort of forbidden element of this relationship. For me, I just didn't really care for this book that much. I felt like Jordan was supposed to be mature just because she had this tough childhood, or sort of that she seemed relatively mature for her age, which is 19. Like it's her 19th birthday on the opening page of this book. When we're only in Jordan's perspective and Pike is not around, Jordan seemed relatively mature. But then I felt as soon as she was around Pike, she just turned into this total brat, very immature. And I felt like Pike couldn't figure out if he wanted to be a parental figure to Jordan or if he wanted to bang her. Like it just hit the oscillation between him feeling parental and like talking about grounding her or whatever, and to then switching immediately to like wanting to do dirty stuff to her. Just it to me was creepy. I just didn't really like that daddy element. I didn't find it sexy. I didn't feel like there was emotional development between them. I felt like everyone was taking turns being idiots and immature all the way around, including Pike. I didn't feel like the ending or the epilogue was very believable. This just didn't work for me as a romance. I didn't even feel like it was like that forbidden. Like, I mean, I could sort of understand how people in their town would talk or gossip, but I just didn't feel like the romance there was believable, and I didn't really care about the characters, so I was mostly annoyed with this one. The next book that I'm going to talk about is Bombshell by Sarah MacLean. I listened to this on audiobook. The summary is that scandalous Lady Cecily can get any guy except for the one she wants. Caleb Calhoun is actually desperate for Cecily, but is holding himself back because of his deep, dark, secret past. Cecily is basically a Regency's Charlie's Angel, and they have to figure out how to reconcile a potential relationship together when he disapproves of her being a Charlie's Angel, essentially. And she has to help. She discovers his secret and then helps protect him and resolve the issues with that. Overall, to me, this was basically just a contemporary book that was dressed up as a historical romance, and I just don't super particularly care for historical romances. And so at first I kind of liked that element because it didn't feel super historical, but then it also kind of was just jarring because it didn't feel like a historical, but didn't feel enough like a contemporary to satisfy me. Cecily just kind of overall was annoying to me. I felt like she was all over the place, scattered, and I felt like Caleb was hot, but I felt like he was especially tough on Cecily and somewhat controlling or demanding of her. And the withholding of his secret past functioned purely as a plot device. Like, there was no reason why the reader couldn't have been let in on that secret earlier on. And I don't know, overall, I just had a bunch of complaints sort of throughout this book and was forcing myself to read through it. And I feel like it was kind of forgettable, and it just, historicals are not really my thing. And that's going to hold true because I kept reading them and stopped liking them. But the next book is not a historical romance. This is a contemporary romance, and this is The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. I listened to this on audiobook, and this is a contemporary sports romance, light on the sports, friends to lovers, mutual pining, fake dating book where we have Bree, who is a ballerina, and she has been in love with Nathan, who is a quarterback, football player, since high school, but they're just friends. And Nathan has been in love with Bree for years too, but they're just friends. And so when Chance arranges for them to be fake dating, they sort of both essentially throw caution to the wind and take a chance to try it for real. I didn't particularly care very much for the writing style of this book. I felt like both dual perspectives take moments to turn and talk to the reader. It just felt like sort of like a Lizzie McGuire moment where she like has her little thing that talks to you as the reader or the viewer, and I didn't really like that element. I also felt like the writing itself was very, very fluffy. My biggest complaint about this whole book is that there's no conflict, angst, or tension throughout the whole thing. There's no tension throughout the whole book, and so it felt so much like cotton candy and fluff. It made it really easy to walk away from this book, and I think ultimately will make this book really forgettable for me. Bree came across as very chipper and like quirky girl. I think that might have been partially done by the narrator, but she was so quirky that she even had like weird metaphors in her thoughts, and I was just kind of like, what's happening here? I felt like Nathan's character was done better, but also he had a better narrator. And there wasn't any reason to develop any emotions throughout this book because they both come into the book already in love with the other character. And so there was no reason for us to fall for these characters either. And structurally, there was no like third act drama or bleak moment. There was sort of a kind of tense moment, I guess. That was like the only kind of tension throughout the whole book. And one of the characters just blurts out all their feelings for no reason, just completely out of the blue. And it had a cheesy ending. So for me, this was just total fluff. If you are interested in like a very fast read, no tension, no angst, closed door sex scene, this might be something to pick up. And the last book that I'm going to talk about in this video is A Spark of Light. Total opposite turnaround from The Cheat Sheet. A Spark of Light by Jodi Picoult is a book that I listened to on audiobook, and this is much heavier in content. This book is told in reverse chronological order, but we essentially go through one day where we are in the minds of multiple people involved in a hostage situation where a gunman is like holding up a abortion women's health clinic. We move from point of view to point of view of a wide variety of people, including the gunman, the hostage negotiator and the hostage negotiator's daughter and sister, who are both in the clinic. and our hostages. There are clinical staff points of view that we go to, a couple different patients or people there for an abortion, or people there for women's health care. And there's also at least one, but also a couple anti-choice perspectives as well. I appreciated having so many points of view. I feel like this is something that Picoult really strives to do for a lot of her books, and I think does well, is she presents a variety of viewpoints and beliefs, and I think she excels at balancing those so that I rarely feel that she pushes an agenda because she covers all of the points of view so thoroughly. And I thought that this book was full of great quotes throughout. I do think that the multiple point of view jumping around from person to person could sometimes be hard to keep track of. And the choice of writing the timeline backwards, it didn't really do much for me personally. I didn't really care one way or the other why it was done that way. I do think it was done well, but not, it wasn't like the most important element of this book, and could have potentially still had impact to be written forward. I do agree overall with some reviews that I saw online with a critique that there is somewhat of a lack of connection to the characters, or a lack of emotion from the characters. Check out, I mean, this is a very heavy topic throughout the whole book, so check out content warnings throughout, but I will say that there's an extremely graphic description of an abortion procedure in this book that I was not expecting. I don't fully agree with the people who said that was completely unnecessary, because I feel like that was part of what was being discussed about this book and the topic and the morality of the whole thing, but it was intense, and I'm used to medical stuff, so just know that going in. So that was a variety of my recent reads, historical romance and general fiction, and forbidden romance, and couple contemporaries. So yeah, if you have read any of these books and have anything to say about them, please leave that down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you next time. Bye!